that wonderful time of year again, the time where we get to all judge each other's music tastes and reflect on some of the beautiful art that we've taken to listen to this year. You know the drill with stuff like this. I'm going to give you some honorable mentions, I'm going to give you my favorite albums of the year, and you'll hopefully like, comment, and subscribe. Honestly, let's just jump right into it. I'm going to get into my honorable mentions first. There were a lot of really good records this year, and it was kind of hard to pick just my favorites and also my honorable mentions. With my honorable mentions, I picked albums that generally I don't listen to the whole thing of often, but they have some really, really good tracks on them. Starting out, I got Double Infinity by Big Thief. Big Thief keeps their crown at the top of the folk scene with Double Infinity. Incomprehensible is probably one of my most played tracks of the year, and while the whole album doesn't reach the same highs as some of their previous work, I love what Big Thief does here. It's a crisp 40-minute track list of some indie folk beauty, and its highest moments have kept me hooked all year. I'm a self-admitted huge fan of Daniel Caesar's work, and this album didn't disappoint me at all. There's a great amount of emotion on this record, and it shows through every track's monstrous vocal performance. On first listen, it connected with me, but I think the whole track list didn't hold up as much as I had hoped upon re-listen, and I think that's kind of a pretty similar story to most Daniel Caesar records. I'm sure every year I'll go back to listening to another different handful of tracks than I do right now. It kind of just need to run its course. Big fan of songs like Rain Down and Root of All Evil. Good Flying Birds is Tallulah's Tape, a very cute, very catchy, but deceptively simple record that I got introduced to in the most fitting way ever, incidentally hearing it played on a cassette player in my living room. This power pop slash indie rock slash art pop slash whatever has its sweet and wholesome riffs pop into my head so often that it had to get a shout out. Personal favorites are GFB and Eric's Eyes. Geese is Getting Killed is the darling album that took all of us by storm, and I don't think it connected with me quite as much as it did some other people, but I think there's really something to be said about the best tracks that are on this track list. Those last 4 tracks are really special, emotional, and I can't help but sing along to that infectiously beautiful refrain on Cocaine. Playboi Carti's music, some days I think this album blows, some days I think it's perfection, and that's why it's ending up in my honorable mentions. If there's one album to describe the state of the quote-unquote mainstream underground, it's this one. Way too bloated for its own good, a whopping 34 tracks after the deluxe, and maybe half of them being good, half of those being great, and then 1 or 2 of them being peak music. Olympian is a top 5 Carti track, South Atlanta Baby is an awesome outro, and Carter's Son, Philly, is another hit. I'm also a fan of the pretty divisive intro in Pop Out. Playboi Carti did make a lasting impact on me with this one, and I still don't even know how to feel about it to this day. Alright, with those out of the way, let me know if you think I snubbed some records. We're gonna get into the big ones. Well, if you know anything about this channel, you'll know just how much of a fan of Mac I am. I was the textbook definition of geeked when I heard this was getting a full release, and it came out exceeding my expectations. While most of these tracks I had already heard before, it comes together with this track sequencing and subtle reworkings to create a complete package of jazz rap beauty. The first and second half of this album are 2 completely different experiences that come together to create a haunting album that rivals the emotional highs of Faces or Swimming. Like I've said before with Faces, the uncanny valley feeling of this record is very similar, especially considering the circumstances around it. That new track, Rick's Piano, is truly chilling. Literally actually goosebumps just listening to it while I write this. I expected Funny Papers to be the emotional climax of this album, but it continues to spiral down and down on the latter half of this album until we get to the show-stopping 1-2 punch of that Rick's Piano and Tomorrow We'll Never Know. But hell, the first part of this record is just as great. The bubbly $5 pony rides, the cinematic DJ's chord organ with that old school SZA feature, and even the goofy and witty friendly hallucinations mixed with those keyboard flourishes that are sprinkled all around this record. It's really hard to choose my favorite on this thing, but I would have to go with the aforementioned Rick's Piano, or honestly Mrs. Deborah Downer. Even after sitting with this album for almost a year, I'd still slide it comfortably into my top 3 Max projects. Fantastic record, easily deserved one of my favorites of the year. Revenge Seekers is an album I haven't even begun to get tired of, despite its release all the way back in April of this year. But if you've listened to it, you know exactly why I've yet to get tired of it. A true evolution of rage music and the blending of genres like digicore and glitch pop. Am I just making up words at this point? Chain Remover has created an album that grabs you by your collar and just shakes you around for 50 minutes before being so infectious that you just want to do it again. It's astounding to me that every track on this record is over 3 minutes long, and half of them over the 4-minute mark, yet it feels so refreshing throughout. I've been following Chain Remover for a while now, since their last release, Census Designated, which has a completely different energy from Revenge Seekers. This record is exactly what indie musicians need to do more of, and it's just have fun. Throw as many random ass sounds in as you can, make addicting music, do whatever appeals to you, and the music will be fun. So much fun on this record, it's astounding. The track Professional Vengeance is a standout, but my favorite, and low-key one of my songs of the year, has got to be Dancing With Your Eyes Closed. A truly addicting album that transcends and evolves rage and electronic music to where it should be in the 2020s. It's a perfect album, honestly, one of my favorites of the year, and for those of you who haven't listened already, and you like things like Black British music, early 2020s JPEG Mafia, or even stuff like Injury Reserve, you'll love this track list as much as I did. Here's a surprise. Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist released another absolute gem together that gives us exactly what we've come to expect from them and fails to disappoint. I'll admit that the last two Freddie Gibbs albums didn't really reach the highs that I had wanted. However, the follow-up to the modern classic Alfredo has done it again. The Gary, Indiana legend delivers his same cold and precise flows over lavish and layered beats from Al, creating another tight 45 minutes of pure gangster rap of the highest quality. The features on this record also do not leave anything to be desired. I'm usually never the most impressed with features on Freddie Gibbs' records, but these three featured artists elevate this record to an insane degree. The standout is, of course, Anderson .Paak on the chorus of Ensalada, a track where Freddie Gibbs' icy bars absolutely glide over this laid-back beat. But the other two features in Larry June, who honestly has been on a great run for the past few years, and Jid leave nothing to the imagination. Fantastic features all around. My personal favorite track is Gas Station Sushi, though. Sorry, it took me like 400 times to do that. The production on that song is a Song of the Year material, and the verses from Freddie feel straight pulled out of Pinata. Probably one of the least surprising albums to end up on this top 10. Here's to another couple decades from these two legendary artists. This year's MJ Lenderman rep goes to Wednesday's Bleeds, another album that I got into just by happenstance, actually getting a track recommended to me from Spotify before I just gave the whole thing a listen. And of course I was floored. I suppose this album kind of falls into that same umbrella of slacker rock that I described with MJ Lenderman's solo record, Manning Fireworks from last year, and I think it kind of upstages that record in a lot of ways. The compositions feel tighter, the songwriting wittier, the emotions more potent, and man, frontwoman Carly Hartzman has some beautiful vocals. I love a lot of this track list. I think there's something to take away from every song, whether it's the bittersweet standout Elderberry Wine, or the layered and noisy Townies, with some heartbreaking lyrics attached to it that you'll see through most of this record. I'd compare this one to another standout from this year, that being Geese Is Getting Killed, but mainly for its vocal deliveries and tight songwriting. If you listened to that album and liked a lot of what you heard, or if you, much like me, got into MJ Lenderman last year with Manning Fireworks, you'll love what his songwriting mixed with Carly Hartzman's vocals and lyrical deliveries get done on this record. Standouts for me are, of course, Elderberry Wine and Wound Up Here. Great record for the snowy season here in the Midwest. Another contender for the least surprising pick of the year. Would I even be a hip-hop channel if this didn't sneak its way into my favorite records of the year? Seriously though, this feels like a completely fresh take from Malice and Pusha T. Not a nostalgia bait, not a rehash of their previous sounds, nothing but unadulterated hip-hop. I love what this record does. I love the harsh energy that this thing creates. I love the biting lyricism and dark yet catchy production. If I were to have one complaint from this record, it's that the first half totally eclipses, no wordplay intended, the second half of it from an impact and quality standpoint. That doesn't mean there's not anything on the second half, like Ibida and FICO still stand out, but man, the 3-track run of Chains and Whips, POV, and So Be It are exactly what people love about this record, and me included. You probably already heard everyone else talk about how awesome this thing is, so I'll just keep it brief. Just know it isn't empty praise, and this duo really did something amazing in the gigantic year 2025. Love this record. Pinkpantheress, my beloved, you've dropped peak once again. I was a huge fan of her last big release in Heaven Knows, and of course been following her career ever since Pain all the way back in 2021. Has it really been that long? This album appeals to me much for the same reason it appeals to everyone. It's catchy, it's fun, it's short and sweet, and to the point pop. As much as I loved her last release, I think Fancy That one-ups it in almost every way imaginable. It's consistent and beautiful and fun and everything I want from Pinkpantheress. It delivered tenfold. I love this record from front to back, and I'm finding it hard to say things about it besides it's fun and this thing is awesome. There's a beautiful nostalgia to it, and its samples make it feel like the perfect synonym for the Gen Z pop and dance. My personal standouts are Tonight with its glittery and bouncy production, and Noises with its sample-heavy rhythm. I just hope I don't have to wait another year and a half for a substantive project from Pinkpantheress, because this thing has been my ear candy for nearly 6 months. Finally, the last record I want to give a shout out to is Saba and No IDs from the Private Collection. Two of Chicago's finest team up for one of the most refreshing pieces of boom bap I've heard in years. I wasn't the biggest fan of Saba's last project, but this project was the exact one I was hoping to hear from him since the Bucket List project. I think this album brings the perfect amount of laid back and introspective that I love about Saba, and the legendary No ID brings some familiar sounds that bring just the right amount of nostalgia you want to hear from a jazz boom bap record like this. From the first track, this thing impressed me. It's surprisingly feature heavy, but every feature knows how to slide on No ID's production. Specifically, shout out to Smino on a few songs and everyone on Head Wrap. I'm impressed with how replayable the track list is. It's a great album to listen to while working or while on a walk. It's perfect to relax or give a deep listen to, and it might be Saba and No ID's finest work in years. Personal favorites are that opening track and Head Wrap. Alright, and that's all I had for this year. This was my quick check-in of the year. Let me know what you guys have been listening to. I am genuinely curious. I'm going to try to be a little more active on here in terms of videos, so I'm going to leave my Twitter in the description, and I'm also going to leave a link to a playlist I made with some of the best music I've heard from this year. You'll see a lot of these tracks that I mentioned on this video, and also you'll see some other tracks that I didn't mention. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you guys around soon.